There's a lot out there right now. There's three different things with the Lakers right now. One is the fact, obviously, that Josh Kushner and Bob Iger are in the process of buying majority control of the team. Okay. Mm-hmm. That is unaffected by parts 2 and 3 that we are going to discuss here in a second. And that is what is most important for the NBA and the Lakers organization, is that there is going to be a change in controlling owner. I honestly don't fully understand what the contractual obligation of keeping Jeanie Buss as the governor is, but the one thing I know about the NBA is that there's one controlling owner. Now those, you can come to an agreement that there's a rotation or whatever, but there's one controlling owner. And my understanding is that's going to be Josh Kushner. Josh Kushner is going to be the controlling owner. Now, Bob Iger's, is that contrary to anything that you've heard, Dave?
Josh Kushner lives in Miami, works in New York, has a place in Malibu.
As
Bob
one
Iger's
does.
But Bob Iger's primary residence is in Brentwood.
No, I mean, I'm not saying Bob Iger won't be in the office.
Kushner will have the largest financial stake. He'll have the largest share.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, of course I've heard that. I thought we were talking more about
here's the thing. Like, no matter what anybody wants to say, no matter what anybody wants to announce, like Mark Cuban announced when he was selling the Mavericks, one of the immutable rules of the NBA is one individual is ultimately the face of the team. Whether or not they want to be the day-to-day operations person, whether or not they want to be the public face of the team or whatever. But that individual typically is the person who has the most money. It's not always the person who has the most money in.
Yeah, but the buck stops with one person ultimately.
Right. And regardless of what happens with the Buss family, Mark Walter owns 73% of the Lakers. Is that right? Or something like that?
I think it's slightly higher than that, yeah.
Okay. But that share is on process to transfer to Kushner and Iger's group. And that's, assuming no hiccups, that's going to happen. Okay, that's silo one. Mm-hmm. All right. And how they decide to move forward with the Lakers is a big, giant story in the NBA and will be something we watch very closely. Now, Dave, part 2, which is the Buss family drama, which I know is a couple of days old now. But you have done a lot of reporting on this and have lived it for decades. I have some things I want to say, but I'll wait for you to follow you.
Well, I love this line that someone told me yesterday. It was, if somehow Jeanie Buss gets through this current fiasco and still remains the acting governor, Adam Streisand deserves the next statue outside of Crypto.com Arena in Star Plaza, because this is mired in muck and red tape and, quite frankly, the logical side of things. When you consider that in 2025, when the Buss family agreed to sell their stake to Walter, sources tell me there was a provision agreed to by all the siblings called a tag-along provision. Basically, if Walter sells at any point, we can roll in our shares to that sale at the new valuation. Now, of course, Jeanie Buss or any other of the siblings could have foresaw that it only being a 10-month ownership period for Mark Walter. But that's what it turned out to be. Jeanie Buss's lawyer, Streisand, is contending that back in 2017, when there was another round of family drama, it was determined by the court that if the Buss siblings were to sell at any point, 3 trustees out of the 6 would have to sign off on it. Jeanie Buss, who used to run the Lakers Youth Foundation, Joey Buss, who was instrumental with the Lakers G League team over the years, and Jeanie would be the 3 trustees. However, in the 8 years since that court agreement, not only did they agree to the tag-along provision, but Jeanie Buss has ousted 2 of those trustees from the organization in Jeanie and Joey.
Shanked them right in the back.
So if this ever goes in front of a judge, the judge would have all this information to consider and weigh and mete out. And at the end of the day, it still seems somewhat implausible to me that the conclusion wouldn't be that 5/6 the vast majority wants to sell this thing. And I'm not going to be the judge to step in front of that sale.
Right. We also are not legal specialists.
Right. And,
well, certainly not.
And look, the legal argument, like, I went to college for 8 years, but I sure as hell ain't a lawyer. I don't whatever, man. But just the common sense argument here. Like, I thought the statement that Shams got from the Bus 5, which is going to be the most, remember the Hamptons 5? Now we've got the Bus 5.
The Bus 5.
But, yeah. But the Bus 5 statement ended with, "It is time to use this opportunity to move on and exit gracefully while we still can." Now, you can argue whether they still can, but it is damn sure time to move on.
Well, that's one thing that Jeanie has going to have to weigh here about what she wants her role to be going forward. And that's something that's a conversation that can be with Bob Iger and Josh Kushner.
Yeah, the NBA Succession show needs to end. We need the show's finale.
What's amazing is there's been 2 shows about the Buss family in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
The HBO show and then the Netflix show, which is the Jeanie Buss story. And neither of them are going to be the best one, which is going to be about this.
The documentary. But let me ask you this. If you're Josh Kushner and Bob Iger, I know Iger said, basically, yeah, we welcome Jeanie, love it. But he left a pretty wide little lane of wiggle room unless things change. Why would they want her still there?
Well,
this is just a mess.
Here's the thing. At the end of the day, this is very basic, but very important. The difference between a year ago and now is that a year ago, the Buss family was the majority shareholder,
mm-hmm.
and now they're not. Okay? The deal that Mark Walter made with the Buss families, with Jeanie, he had to make that deal because they were the ones deciding the control share.
That's right.
Now they are not. Okay? So one of the immutable facts I talked about with the NBA ownership is there's one control owner. Another immutable fact is if you're a minority owner, you are just that. You are to be seen and not heard. Now, Jeanie worked out this deal, and it was an incredible deal for her. But at the end of the day, if you are a minority shareholder, you get good tickets, and that's just the truth. Okay. Yeah. I know a guy who is a very small owner of an NBA team. Is a sliver of a team. And he will call me and ask me, or I shouldn't say he doesn't have my number. He will message me and ask me what his team is doing because he's 100% completely in the dark. Okay.
Mark Cuban?
Well, I to this day don't understand, Mark Cuban, who's one of the most forward thinkers in the league for the last 20 years, how his viewpoint of that was so wild.
Brian also said he's a small owner. Mark's probably 6 feet tall, so gotta be.
Anyway,
but let me ask you this.
Well, hold on.
Okay, go on.
Hold on. So that's one thing. Is it this is now it's a significant share of the team. 18% of the Lakers is a ton of money.
Yeah, divided by 6 is like $330 some odd million apiece.
Right. Okay. Secondly, Adam Streisand, her attorney, is an excellent attorney. I do not want to ever go against him in a court of law. He has successfully argued for Jeanie in the past, and his interpretation of their family trust, which he is obviously an expert in, has delivered a winning argument. Okay? And his interpretation of this, and I'm not going to get into the chapter and verse of it because I'm not an expert, but his interpretation of this might end up being correct in front of a judge, and they may win. But here's what I know. Okay, actions over words. What I know is this. When it came time to sell the Lakers to Mark Walter's group, it wasn't Jeanie Buss who made the decision. She had to get a vote.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Interesting.
And here's time to sell it again. It's not going to, I'm not going to.
5-1 is pretty tough numbers.
Right, but last year, she made this maneuver with her brothers, which broke some of her family's hearts and ruined. Baxter Holmes did a story about all this that was excellent, I think, back in January or February. But she had to have the votes a year ago to sell. Okay? If the vote was needed a year ago to sell, why would the vote not be needed now? But I'm going to step out of that minutia and just say that this is a fight over 18% of the Lakers. The other 70-some percent, which is the control share, is going to move on. And even though Jeanie was the governor, Jeanie was not deciding, whether to sign LeBron James or not. I mean, she may have been in the room, but that was being decided, by Mark Walter. So I think those are. You have any problem with what I just said? Either of you? Or you think I'm off?
No, okay. I that all tracks.
All right. The third slice of this is Mark Walter's personal situation, which doesn't really matter that much to the NBA anymore because he's about to exit stage left. But it is a problematic situation as you look, and there's a whole bunch of. So he has been under investigation for almost a year, and it became public that he was under investigation about 6-ish weeks ago, maybe 8. I'm not sure. Sometime this summer.
In July, yeah.
And once that happened, a whole bunch of media and also like people who have their own, just like in basketball, where there's a bunch of people like us who are reporters, who have, who do video podcasts or whatever, or people on Substack, all those people descended onto all the legal filings of all of Mark Walter's insurance companies. And every day there is more and more stuff coming out about the financial engineering that is going on. I remember when I was a teenager, my dad was a middle manager at a really big company. And I had a friend who went to the Ivy League, went to an Ivy League school. And when I was like 19 or 20 years old, I came home and my friend came and my dad was sitting there and he goes, "Hey, what are you studying there?" And he goes, "I'm studying financial engineering." This was in 1998. Okay. I'm studying financial engineering. "Oh, okay, cool." And he leaves. And my dad goes, my dad was, in his mid 40s, and he's like, "Financial engineering? Like the engineers sit at this side of the company and the financial guys sit at that side of the company. They don't talk to each other." That we were going into a new era with financial engineering. And if you spent any time reading about Mark Walter's stuff, this is just one giant piece of financial engineering. But I do have,
or some might call it a shell game.
Story time.
Some might call it a shell game, Brian. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
yes, but it's financial engineering. Definitely a shell.
That's a nicer way to put it.
All right. So here's my story time, brought to you by SoFi. Get your money right. So
Get when the Walter, right, Mark Walter.
Good front offices don't just react. They make moves that simplify things and set themselves up better long term. On a personal level, consolidating high-interest debt is that same kind of decision. Fewer moving pieces, more clarity. That's where a SoFi personal loan fits in. One fixed-rate payment, no fees, and a more straightforward way to get things under control. A SoFi personal loan is here to help you achieve something once thought impossible: overcoming high-interest credit card debt. Walk the tightrope of your finances with one low fixed-rate monthly payment, no fees required, and as soon as same-day funding. That's right, pull off your own debt-defying stunt with a SoFi personal loan. Visit SoFi.com/trick to learn more. Loans originated by SoFi Bank N.A., member FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. NMLS 696891. When the Walter sale closed last year, was it earlier this year, Dave? When did it actually close?
It was October 2025.
Okay. So I started talking and writing about how Abu Dhabi, Mudabala, which is the sovereign wealth fund of Abu Dhabi. And you guys know I've been to Abu Dhabi a number of times, developed relationships in some of their government offices, and have written and reported a lot about their investment in American sports and the NBA. Abu Dhabi had given $10 billion, committed $10 billion to Mark Walter's fund, which is called TWC Global.
Mm-hmm.
TWG Global, I'm sorry. Not only that, but like Abu Dhabi, as you can imagine, being, and now they're in the middle of dealing with the conflict in the Middle East, which is their whole situation has changed. But when they make an investment in something, they they often set the terms because of how much money they have. And they did something when they made their partnership with Mark Walter that was very unusual. They were investing $10 billion in Mark Walter's company, and they were allowing Mark Walter to, in return, buy a percentage of their sovereign wealth fund. This had only happened one other time. But the point of all of that is that they believed so much in him that this, super elite financial operation said, not only do we want to invest in you, we want you to be our partner in our operation. So just a year ago or a year and a half ago, the respect level that Mark Walter had was immense. But here's the story that is what I'm going to tell. I was talking about this investment that Abu Dhabi made in Mark Walter's fund, and then Mark Walter's fund then buying the Lakers. And I got a call from someone attached to Mark Walter. And they said, please stop connecting Abu Dhabi with Mark Walter's purchase of the Lakers. And I said, why? Abu Dhabi gave $10 billion. and then a couple of months later, that same fund, TWG, bought the Lakers.
It's probably a coincidence, like Ballmer giving all that money to
So, hey, listen, if I'm wrong, I want to be correct. I said, why? And this person said, because Mark Walter bought the Lakers with his own money. And I said, okay. I said, please don't take offense to this because, it was bought for a $10 billion valuation.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't really actually $10 billion. First off, he and his group
75% versus
right. Not even that, because he and his group already owned 27%.
That's
so
right.
They were buying about 50%. So they needed like $5 to $6 billion. And I said, please don't take offense to what I'm about to say. Did Mark Walter personally have $6 billion? Because I knew that he ran an insurance company that had billions under management, but that doesn't mean you have the money yourself. I kind of got laughed at, and I was, yes, absolutely, of course. And so I was just saying, like, the common sense is, where did that? I was just like, well, so by the way, I stopped saying it. I was like, okay, if I was wrong, I won't. Even though it was public information that Abu Dhabi invested in. And then when the Lakers sale was announced publicly, it said TWG. It was like right there. I was like, all right. Okay, I won't connect him anymore. But I didn't understand how he would have that kind of money. If he already owned the Dodgers and he already owned Chelsea and he already owned the Sparks and he already had this, he would also have that much money. It just didn't make sense to me. And so anyway, I would just say that this whole thing is one giant financial quagmire. And
Brian, have you called that guy back in the last 2 weeks? I would be relishing that phone call. Like, hey, let's talk about that.
I'm not sure. I still am not sure what's true. I just know that, I know that, like, what Warren Buffett says. By the way, Warren Buffett has bought and invested in a lot of insurance companies, and he would say that insurance is profitable, but it's not the kind of profitable that would allow you to be buying all these sports teams. But
I know one thing that's true: the sooner they can get Mark Walter and Jeanie Buss the hell out of the building, the better.
Well, anyway,
the lesson here, though. Sorry, I hope I'm not stepping on your final point, your grand finale, Brian. But the lesson here is that the league needs to do a better job of vetting all of these major partners that are coming into it, whether that be a team sponsorship from Aspiration with the Clippers, whether that be the board of governors voting on Mark Walter's acquisition of the prize franchise, the crown jewel of your league. Because, hey, guess what? The Wall Street Journal reported that in September of last year, 2025, Mark Walter had devices seized from him as part of the Fed's investigation. In October, the NBA Board of Governors said, yep, put the red stamp on it. He's new Lakers owner. I think the NBA needs some more resources in their vetting process.
But let me just say this. Abu Dhabi doesn't mess around. And Abu Dhabi invested with him and they didn't know.
Yeah. Well,
so,
the league's not exactly
and here's the other thing I'm
going
to say. Again, assume this is reported by the Wall Street Journal. I assume this is correct. They didn't find out about this, potential, financial engineering issues because, like, they did it with an investigation. It was a whistleblower.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Somebody came to them and said, "Hey, this is going on." And so, I think there's only so much the NBA can do. What Mark Walter did was he said, "Here's my account with $6 billion in it. There it is right there." And the NBA is like, "Is this actual money from $6 billion? Yes." And the NBA is like, "Okay, he's got the money. He's also owns the Dodgers and owns Chelsea, which means Major League Baseball approved him. And, they're approved, with the international soccer bodies. And he's got the money, and Abu Dhabi invested with him. Some of this becomes self-perpetuating." And by the way, he might not have done anything illegal. This may just be risky. He's being investigated for doing something illegal. But I think the point is this. If you see something that doesn't quite make sense, and this is, again, what Warren Buffett says, if you see something that you don't understand, just stay away from it. Even if somebody else is making money on it or whatever, if you don't understand, you don't understand. I didn't understand how Mark Walter had the money to personally buy the Lakers. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't have the subpoena power or the financial engineering doctorate from Princeton to totally understand what was going on. But it didn't make sense to me that he had the money personally to buy the Lakers. It didn't make sense to me. So make of that what you will. If you want to call me inadequate, that's fine. But you wouldn't be the first. But Dave, so the crazy thing here is that the Lakers were in the middle of this makeover for their team. They, the entire business operation has been turned over. There are people, I know of one guy who was a front office guy who was in the middle of leaving one team to go to the Lakers. And now all of a sudden they're in a hiring freeze. And it's like, well, who's going to be in charge?
Chris Paul.
I don't know.
These are the questions, and obviously the on-court product is relatively locked in. Obviously, we talked about Kuminga. Who knows if that happens? But they have 16 guys on their roster. The team's mostly going to look like what's going to look like for next season. But when you are trying to contend and trying to add an 18th banner, you're going to have to win around the margins. And part of their intention going into this offseason was to use Mark Walter's resources and put it towards other ways that they can enhance the program. And, Rob Pelinka stated he wanted to hire 2 assistant general managers. He was only able to bring in 1. The other spot remains vacant, as you just said, a hiring freeze. We're going to see. I haven't been in the Lakers practice facility in months. I know they just unveiled new practice courts that they showed on social media, but part of the idea of the G League team moving to Palm Desert was to use the space that the G League team occupied and turn it into advanced training equipment and medical equipment that the players could use on a daily basis. I don't know where that stands. These are the type of things that, while we wait for the sale to be completed with Iger and Kushner, could be put on pause. And, when you're Luka Doncic and you made the NBA Finals with the Mavericks, and now it's 2 straight years without getting back to that perch and wanting to have every available advantage at your fingertips to try to get back there, when you have someone like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's now lapped you with a championship and 2 league MVPs, we'll see how patient he's going to be with this process.
And look, just like Joker can profess his loyalty to the Nuggets, there's still going to be teams that are positioning themselves and monitoring that and all that kind of thing. It's the same thing with Luka. He's done nothing but express optimism and excitement about the Lakers since he signed that extension. But it's not that long-term of an extension, and you better believe there's teams around the league that are looking at that situation and saying, hey, if this thing goes sideways, we'd sure like to get Luka midway through his prime.
Well, we'll say this, and if you're Luka, betting on the brand is pretty safe, which is why the Lakers sold for even more money than they sold for a year ago. And chances are, if they sold again in a year, they'd sell for even more, because you're betting on the brand.
Well, and the brand is so strong that despite pretty constant mismanagement through Jeanie Buss's reign, they managed to win a championship because the brand's so strong that LeBron James decided he wanted to come there and AD forced a trade there. Like, there's advantages to being the most glamorous franchise in basketball located in sunny Southern California.
One thing, Dave, you had a story that came out this week that's because you mentioned tag-along rights. The concept of the reason you'd have a tag-along right would be if you're a minority owner of a team and the team controls sells, you want to be able to have the right to sell your shares at the same time because if you're buying a controlling piece of a team, you're going to pay more for it. If you're buying a piece of a team that only doesn't give you control at all, you're probably going to pay less. If the Lakers controlling share sold for a $12 billion valuation, and the Buss family keeps their 18% and they sell in a year, that would be very valuable. But I don't think they could get $12 billion. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they could get. The whole reason to have a tag along right is so that you can. If you're a minority owner, it gives you an off-ramp to join the highest sale possible. So that's one of the reasons why the Buss family, other than to nail Jeanie for firing all of them.
I was going to say, especially if you're a minority owner who was fired and kicked out of the building.
Yeah, one of the reasons you want to tag along right is the ability to maximize your value for your share. I assume Patrick Soon-Shiong, who is the Lakers minority shareholder, who you wrote a story about this week, had tag along rights, but he's passing. You wrote about that this week.
Yeah, he's passing, and it's significant one in just the sense of understanding what the entire scope of the ownership will look like whenever the Iger and Kushner sale is ratified by the Board of Governors. But it is also significant because The Athletic is reporting that if Jeanie Buss loses her legal battle and all of her siblings are free to sell their shares off, and she's left with just under 3%. The Athletic's reporting that she is interested in buying back 12% of the team somewhere to be able to hold 15% is what the requirement to be the acting governor, which was her intention to do it for 5 years at a minimum at time of the Walter sale. So we've already ticked off one of those 5 years. Well, guess what? That's 4% that is unavailable to her. Patrick Soon-Shiong's not selling. Ed Roski Jr. has 3% out there, and then everything that's left will be under Iger and Kushner's jurisdiction. And I don't really see the motivation for them to sell back 12% to Jeanie Buss. And
well, I mean, in theory, if she had a better relationship with her siblings, she could buy them out.
Good luck.
Sure. Yeah. Three of them had a job a year ago, and now they don't because
double the price, and I'll think about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a lot of financial engineering for a basketball podcast. So, on that note, thank you very much,
needs
Dave.
A good agent.
Your friend must be pretty damn smart if he's the one out of you two to go to an Ivy League school. I feel like you could have fit an Ivy League.
Wow,
campus,
what an incredible! Is he trying to butter me up for something? Is there some sort of ask to come here? I went to Kent State University, which is the Harvard of Portage County, Ohio.
There we go.